I was one of the lucky few people to get an early invite into the MultiVersus closed alpha. Ever since that alpha went away, there's just been this deep, gaping hole in my heart and just this everlasting feeling of despair hanging over my head. Now all there is to do is wait and speculate. We gotta wait until the open beta in July, wait until the Evo tournament gives us a lot of really high level gameplay in August, and of course, wait for the eventual release of the game, which is hopefully sooner rather than later, preying on September. But of course, we can always speculate, which is a lot of fun. As for what we can speculate about, I mean, that release date seems like a good thing to take guesses on. What modes will be in the game, what costumes we're gonna get, and the most fun thing, what characters are going to be in the base roster. Today, I am going to take my best guess as to what characters are going to be in the full final roster for the launch of this game. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent because I'm not here to fool anybody. My predictions are based off of leaks and datamines, and this is my honest attempt at an educated guess. Now, when I mention a character that I think is going to come into the game, I am going to be talking about the datamines and the leaks that back this up and that make me feel confident they're on the way. However, Warner Brothers is Warner Brothers, so I am not going to be showing any datamines or leaks at fear of being attacked by a bunch of men in suits during the middle of the night. Even Hungrybox could not avoid their strikes, and I am much smaller than Hungrybox, so I'm just gonna play it safe here, gang. Now, before we start guessing on what characters are going to be in the game and who's going to be joining who, I think it's really important to try and figure out how big of a roster we're getting at launch. I may be alone in this camp, but I actually think the roster is going to be pretty big, and there's a couple of reasons for this. The first is what other games were able to accomplish with less time and a smaller budget. Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl had 20 characters at the start of the game, and they had a year of development and the same budget that a high school teacher gets for that year of classroom teaching. If that game can manage 20 characters in a year, I think a game where characters have less moves in their movesets and with a higher budget and that has been in development for a longer time could manage maybe even around 30 characters. There's also the reveal trailer where we see 10 lights flashing in the background in that big overarching group shot, and to me that just means we're getting at least 10 more characters. At least that's my guess. I have no idea if that's actually how it's gonna work. For all I know, we get 6 more character reveals and we're done, but I have a lot of confidence in this development team, so I'm going to guess we're getting anywhere between 26 characters and 30 characters. Just to cover my bases, I'm going to play it closer to 30 characters, and my base roster is going to be 29 characters large, which is the same size as the roster of Injustice 2 at launch. And while Injustice 2 had the assets of the previous Injustice game, this game has all of the platform fighters' movesets that exist in all the games to use as inspiration, but this game also has the advantage of having much smaller movesets than the Injustice characters have, so I think 29 is a good roster to go off of because it's the biggest launch roster for a Warner Brothers fighting game in like 10 to 15 years. It's been a long time. So with all that introductory crap out of the way, let's get right into the first character I think is going to be joining the revealed roster we have so far. That first character we're going to be talking about is Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty. Rick has a lot of evidence going for him, more so than pretty much any other character in the game. The copyright for Rick and Morty is already showing at the end of trailers. The copyright for Rick and Morty was included in the email that came with my invitation. There are Rick and Morty characters in the game already. Mr. Meeseeks is part of Bugs Bunny's moveset, and Mr. Meeseeks is also the tutorial character, funny enough. And I don't think you're going to involve Rick and Morty in such a heavy way unless you're going to have either Rick or Morty in the base game. To me, this shows that they got the rights to Rick and Morty. Why would you not put in the characters Rick and Morty into the base game if you have the rights for them. It just doesn't make sense to exclude them. And Rick specifically has a lot of evidence backing him up. He has an entire moveset in the files. The other character to have this was Taz, and well, Taz got revealed. His icon was actually found in the files, which was pretty crazy. And oh yeah, he was in every version of the leak for this game, including the initial roster leak that got Hungrybox's video taken down. It's a pretty big deal, and I feel like this character is more of an inevitability, and I feel like this is just a freebie. This is essentially the free space on Bingo if we're guessing what characters are going to be in the game. And you may have already heard me allude to this earlier, but I do think Morty is going to be joining Rick on the base roster. If Steven Universe and Adventure Time get 2 reps, I think Rick and Morty get 2 reps. It's as simple as that. They have a stage in the game, but what it really comes down to is this is a 2v2 game, and I think a lot of the selling point for this game to people is going to be having iconic duos in the base game so that people can play with their friends as these duos. During the closed alpha, I saw a lot of people running the team Steven and Garnet, and way more people playing the team Finn and Jake. That's a lot of the appeal to the game. I saw a lot of Batman and Superman teams. It just kind of makes sense. And there's also data pointing to Morty in the files. There are characters that talk to Morty as if he is a playable fighter, either on their team or fighting against them. So I do think Morty is on the way, and I would say that I believe he's going to be base roster. The next 2 characters I want to talk about are actually Looney Tunes reps in a way. No, it's not Daffy Duck, it's actually Marvin the Martian, because Marvin is fully voiced in the game's files. I've heard this man speak to me. You know what other character was fully voiced and spoke to me? The Iron Giant, who got revealed. So I do think that Marvin the Martian is going to be in the game, and I don't think you're going to go through the effort of getting a voice actor for a character that's not going to be playable. So I think all of these characters that are fully voiced are going to be in the base roster, and we'll get to the rest of them in a bit. But we can go ahead and start with one of them right now, LeBron James. I've heard LeBron James talk to me, and specifically Bugs Bunny, and that is absolutely mind-boggling. He's a really cool character. He's technically the first guest character, the first third-party character we're talking about today. But I think it fits really well. Space Jam is a pretty iconic movie to Warner Brothers. And there's also a basketball item in the game's files that I've seen someone actually equip and use, which is pretty cool. Again, I'm not going to show any of that because I value my channel and I don't want it to be stricken down to dust. But needless to say, I think LeBron James is pretty likely. Also, the Space Jam basketball court is a stage in the files, and if I forgot to mention it, Rick and Morty also have a Get Schwifty stage, which is in the files. And yeah, I just think these 4 characters specifically are all pretty much guaranteed to be in the game's base roster. But they won't be alone, and there's a couple DC characters I think that are going to be joining them. The first of these is actually Raven from the Teen Titans. It's not the Flash, it's not Aquaman, it's Raven. Raven is yet another one of these characters that is fully voiced, and there is also data for a Teen Titans Tower stage in the game's files. With that said, I also think she's actually a really good pick for DC, because I kind of think as DC as a brand with different franchises. Batman is a franchise, Superman is a franchise, the Justice League is a franchise, and the Teen Titans are a franchise, which Raven represents. And even though I used the Fortnite render, I definitely think Raven would probably get her own design, like the other characters in this game, and I think she's inevitably going to get a Teen Titans skin, so she can also double as a rep for the Cartoon Network show. Just having a Cartoon Network rep and a DC rep in one character is really valuable, and Raven's pretty popular, so I think this makes a lot of sense. And the second DC character is not gonna surprise anybody. It's the Joker, baby. Everybody thinks he's gonna be in the game, and it's for a good reason. This is not just the biggest DC Comics supervillain, this is arguably the biggest villain in fiction, period. He's definitely up there with guys like Darth Vader in terms of just how iconic he is, how long he's been a part of pop culture, and how successful the things he's in are. I mean, The Dark Knight is widely regarded as the best Batman movie still to this day, and the Joker is also the main character in the highest grossing R-rated movie of all time. There's also data in the files to back him up. While he himself may not be fully voiced yet, as far as we know, in the files he has more lines of people talking to him than any other character that's not a fully playable character that's been revealed. That says a lot to me, and I think Joker is one of the safest bets for a base roster character. And speaking of safe bets, let's talk Gandalf. Now, I love Lord of the Rings, and I would be ecstatic to see any Lord of the Rings character in the game, and luckily for me, Gandalf seems like a very safe bet. We've actually seen what Gandalf looks like in-game thanks to the Hungrybox leak, which also included Rick. Gandalf is the other character with a moveset in the files alongside Taz, who has been revealed as playable, and also Rick, who is definitely going to be playable. And I've seen a lot of people kind of speculating that he might be out of the running because of how difficult Lord of the Rings rights can be to get, and the Tolkien estate seems really difficult to work with. Keep in mind that EA's mobile gaming division got a hold of the Tolkien rights for a Lord of the Rings game. I don't think the gaming rights specifically are that difficult to work with, especially considering that Warner Brothers have made Lord of the Rings games in the past. I still think Warner Brothers has the most pull out of any company that's making stuff for Lord of the Rings, even over Amazon, because Warner Brothers still has the exclusive film rights to the franchise, and I feel like that's going to give them some sway. There are also 3 Lord of the Rings stages in the game's files, which to me kind of washes away the worry that Gandalf may have had a rights issue. So much so that I actually think we might be getting another Lord of the Rings character alongside Gandalf, because to me, that just kind of makes sense, right? 3 stages is a lot for a franchise that only has 1 rep, and luckily enough, there has been another Lord of the Rings character in the game's files, and that character is Legolas. Now, to be fair, in February, I think, was when this Datamine was found, and Legolas only had a prototype character file that was pretty much empty. However, it shows that Legolas is the next Lord of the Rings character on Player First Games' minds, and that kind of makes sense to me. I mean, Legolas and Gandalf are in every Lord of the Rings original trilogy movie, and I also think they're in every movie for the Hobbit trilogy. I haven't seen those, but I'm pretty sure they represent all of Lord of the Rings as a whole really well, which is pretty cool. My next choice for a character would probably be Gollum, because he's also in both trilogies, and he's getting his own game. But that game is coming out much later, and I think if they add Gollum, it will be to help kind of cross-promote that game. So yeah, I think we're getting Gandalf and Legolas both, which of course makes me really happy as an elf stan. Let's go elves! Now, before we get into these final 3 non-guest characters, I want to break down a couple of other honorable mentions that I think are really likely as well, and I want at least a half point if these characters get in, you know what I mean? Like every character I've mentioned so far, I get 1 to 5 points depending on how far of a reach they are. I think Legolas might be worth 5 points and Rick might be worth 1 point, you know what I mean? But these characters I at least want partial credit on, and I do think they're really likely, so let's break them down really quickly. The 2 I think are the most likely are the Animaniacs and Emmett from the Lego Movie. The Animaniacs make a lot of sense because there is a Warner Brothers Tower stage in the files, and I think they live there. And Emmett makes a lot of sense because, for one, he also had a prototype character file like Legolas, but there are also brick building mechanics and Lego items in the game. There's just a lot of stuff revolving Emmett, but I don't know if they're saving him for later. I don't know what the deal with that is. And there's one more Warner Brothers character that I want to talk about, and that is Ben 10. I think Ben 10 is an inevitability, kind of like Daffy Duck. I think these characters are going to come, but they're going to come later. I think Ben 10 is going to come out when they figure out how to make a moveset for him. The developers have pretty openly said that Ben 10 isn't the easiest character to work around, and that as soon as they come up with a way to make him a character that is true to Ben 10 and is fun and engaging, they're gonna do it. But they also said that Ben 10 is a character that would take a lot of resources, and when you're working on getting a game to launch, because I'm pretty sure internally they have deadlines and a release date in mind, they just don't want to say it out loud and disappoint fans if they have to delay, but I'm pretty sure they have a deadline they want to reach. All games do, and investing a lot of resources in a character that would probably be the most difficult character to design for the entire game is not something they want to do while preparing a game for launch and bug fixing and taking in all this feedback from the alphas in the beta. So if you're a Ben 10 fan, I wouldn't be worried for his chances at all. I think he's pretty much guaranteed. I think you just need a little bit of patience. As for Daffy Duck, I think he is by far the most popular Looney Tunes character not in the game, but I think they're going to save him for a little bit down the road. The way a lot of fighting games work, they're not going to put every single popular character in the base roster because they need some characters to bring you back to the game or to keep the game's momentum going post-launch. Also, they can't have a roster of 50 characters, and there's a lot of franchises they need to get to. But now that we've gotten those honorable mentions out of the way, let's keep trucking with the next Warner Brothers character I think we're going to get, and that character is Gizmo from the Gremlins. Yet again, we have someone that has spoken to me, and Gizmo isn't the only Gremlins character with data in the files, but Stripe does as well. Interestingly though, in the files, I'm pretty sure they're listed as the same character, so either Gizmo is going to turn into Stripe, or they're kind of a tag team character where they're going to swap out. They might work like the Ice Climbers, because Tom and Jerry isn't really the Ice Climbers. Tom is swinging at Jerry. Jerry is more functional to Luma than he is like Nana. So maybe they're Ice Climbers, who knows? But I do think Gizmo and Stripe as one character is going to be in. For the purpose of this Photoshop, I just used Gizmo. The next character I want to talk about is pretty obvious if we just look at this game's base roster and what's already been revealed to us. If you look at the roster, every single show in the game has 2 reps, except for Game of Thrones, which only has 1, which is really interesting to me because Game of Thrones is a much more popular show. For a while, it was even considered the #1 show on TV or on streaming services, really anywhere. Everyone was talking about it, and this show is too huge for them not to have multiple reps for, especially if Steven Universe gets 2 reps and Adventure Time gets 2 reps. So my guess on who we're getting for the second Game of Thrones character is going to be Daenerys Targaryen. Now there's a couple of things that back this up other than Game of Thrones just being popular. There are a couple of characters that mention Daenerys Targaryen in their voice lines. There are multiple stages in the files for Game of Thrones. Again, I think multiple stages is a good sign for multiple reps. And also, there is a Game of Thrones show coming out very soon, which is focused around the Targaryens and dragons. Who would be the perfect character to put in MultiVersus to cross-promote? Oh yeah, a Targaryen with dragons. And our final Warner Brothers character for the base roster is going to be Scooby-Doo. Now in hindsight, I think I would actually trade Scooby-Doo out for the Animaniacs, but I've committed to the dog, and I'm going to explain why I thought the dog was so likely. Now Scooby-Doo was mentioned in the description of a Warner Brothers UK upload of the trailer. I don't personally think that means anything serious. Whoever uploads videos to the Warner Brothers UK YouTube channel, I don't think has information on who's in the full game of MultiVersus, but I still think it's worth talking about. More so, Scooby-Doo just has voice lines mentioning him in the files, the Animaniacs don't, and he is by far one of the most requested characters so far because we have Shaggy, we have Velma, but we don't have the mascot of the series. I think it just kind of makes sense. And there we have it. These 27 characters are my picks for the Warner Brothers first party characters we're going to get. Lord of the Rings are kind of third party characters, kind of not. LeBron James is a third party character, but forget all that. These are my picks for the Warner Brothers base roster. Who are my picks for the guest characters? Well, thankfully, there's a lot of evidence for these two characters in the game's files. Before we get into the final two characters, I want to give an honorable mention to the Hulk and Naruto. The reason I want to mention Hulk and Naruto as honorable mentions is because of the Brute OC and the Ninja OC that are in the files, because these OCs come with assets from the Avengers, whether it's a Quinjet or symbols from the Naruto show, and they even fight like the Hulk and Naruto. The Ninja has shadow clones, and the Brute has like that iconic hand clap. However, these might be characters that are from the files and have been used to maybe pitch the game to Shonen Jump or Disney. Maybe they predate this game being a Warner Brothers game, or maybe they're just saving these games as prototypes to pitch to Disney and to pitch to Shonen Jump to get these characters in the game once MultiVersus launches and is proved to be successful. Who knows, but I don't think they're very safe guesses. They do warrant an honorable mention though. The safe guesses are pretty much going to be in the game at some point, and we're going to start with Godzilla. Now, a lot of people think the MonsterVerse characters are actually Warner Brothers, and that's not the case. These are all owned by the Toho company in Japan. Toho and Warner Brothers have reached an agreement, and Warner Brothers is allowed to make movies based off of their characters, but they are by no means Warner Brothers characters that they can do whatever they want with. So if these characters are to appear in MultiVersus, including Godzilla, they would need to reach an agreement with Toho, which I think is very feasible and has actually been done. Godzilla actually has a lot of data in the files. He has assets for various moves, including something with a nuclear reactor, and someone even put Batman's model over the Godzilla asset in the files, and they found out how big Godzilla was going to be, which, ding ding ding, is twice as big as the other characters in the game, which is a quote from the developers themselves on how big these big bodies are going to be. And between Godzilla having assets in the files, Iron Giant being the only big body in the base game, which seems weird to me. I feel like you would want at least one other big body in the base roster. It just all kind of lines up and points towards Godzilla being in the MultiVersus game. And of course, he would be our first really big third party, other than I guess Lord of the Rings and LeBron James. But our last really big third party character is going to be not from a movie, but a Netflix show. The biggest Netflix show ever, to be exact, Stranger Things. We're getting 11. So here's the deal with 11, guys. I've heard the Iron Giant say 11's name in the files. Of course, Iron Giant got revealed shortly afterwards. That to me kind of puts some truth to this. And in addition to being mentioned by other characters, they found her model, at least an early version of it, in the files for MultiVersus. It also kind of lines up. MultiVersus closed alpha ended the same day that the first part of Stranger Things Season 4 came out, and the second part of Stranger Things Season 4 comes out in July, which, funny enough, is when the open beta comes out. I'm not saying this was done on purpose by the MultiVersus team or by Netflix. I think if it was on purpose, it's more likely the MultiVersus team kind of scheduling around the release of this season. But it does mean that the hype for MultiVersus and the hype for Stranger Things perfectly aligns, which is really good, and it's going to be really beneficial for MultiVersus to have 11 in the game. I think it might also benefit the Netflix show. Again, I just kind of think it's mutually beneficial. And yeah, that would be my final pick for the base roster. These 29 characters are the champions that I think we are going to be seeing in the MultiVersus game, at least at launch. And again, I'm not a genius or anything. I just looked at the Datamine characters and what we know about the Datamines and how much information we have about each character, and kind of based my opinions on that. This is an educated guess, but it is by no means guaranteed. So potential spoilers, I say at the end of the video. Don't worry, I'll put a tag at the beginning. And with all of that said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll smell you guys later.